table.
So how are things going to change now that Snow and Charming remember each other?
Well, everything's going to change because they really will remember everything. I mean, at this point, to the best of our knowledge, from this point forward, and they will now have to sort of reconcile these two different characters, these two different lives that they've lived, and now we will all be playing the amalgamation of those characters that we portrayed separately before, and yet we'll also be portraying those separate characters in flashbacks. But I think that their relationship, I think what is going to happen to them this season will be just truly as titillating to the audience as it was last year. It's just for completely different reasons.
The Snow that we met was a pretty ferocious character, whereas Mary Margaret was a little bit more meek. Now that she knows that she's Snow, we're going to be seeing more Regina and Mary Margaret scenes that are a little bit more on equal footing.
Oh, I think so. I mean, no matter what, Mary Margaret will always be a part of Snow White, but she is ultimately Snow White. Snow White is her true identity. So even though Snow White, from the present on, from the beginning of season 2 on, will not be the same Snow White. I have no idea how I'm going to do this. And we start on Thursday. I mean, I start on Thursday. Everybody else starts on Monday. I have to figure out how I'm going to play this character by Thursday. But as Mary Margaret is now, integrated into that Snow Whiteness, it will affect our Snow White, but she definitely will be far more empowered than was, and therefore, yes, have a far stronger stance against Regina.
How will the relationship between Mary Margaret or Snow White and Emma change as a result of everyone doing this?
I think it'll change drastically. I mean, for a lot of reasons. One is, these women were each other's their first best friends, because they were both loners to a certain extent and didn't really let anyone in, even though it was for different reasons. And so now they're both going to be, they've each lost their best friend, and they don't really have anyone to confide in about their relationship now, because they would have gone to each other. And also, I think that while there's going to be so much relief at their having basically found each other, there are complications due to the fact that they're now all the same age. And that Emma's parents are fairy tale characters that she's been very familiar with her whole life. But also, I mean, I would imagine there's going to be resentment on both ends. There would have to be, because of choices that were made and the fact that they did not get to, they each lost their first 28 years of love.
So are we going to see Snow become friends with Ruby again, since they were friends?
Oh, she would have to be. I mean, Mary Margaret was friends with Ruby towards the end of the first season, but those girls have a pretty strong bond, so I imagine that they'll come back together. I hope so.
So the first thing, Snow and Charming do is find each other. Is the second thing Snow finding a sword and going to Regina's house?
That's really interesting. I have thought a lot about revenge, because I would be, as me, Ginny, I would be full of so much hate and so much anger and resentment towards Regina. But the thing about Snow White is that she is, in some ways, though flawed, she is so good. And I remember we came to a point last year in a stunt rehearsal where Snow White was fighting the knights, and the stunt coordinator and the director told me to stab slit one of the soldiers' necks, one of the knights, and I said, I just realized I'm just making a decision right now that Snow White doesn't kill anybody. That doesn't make sense. It just doesn't fit with who we've created, and it doesn't work. I can't imagine Disney would want me to kill anyone either, but I think that Snow White thinks that everything, in the end, that justice always has its day, and that people are punished without there being a need for too much violence, that right will always win, that good will always win. And so I don't think she would necessarily take the sword to Regina's house, but we'll see. We'll see.
You talked a little bit about Mary Margaret and now becoming a grandmother.
I know. She doesn't even know how to be a mother.
That's great. Last question.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, you know, we tried to infuse some moments between Emma and Mary Margaret with a sort of maternal tone. You know, we did things like, Mary Margaret was always trying to feed Emma. She was always doing things like folding her laundry, and she would be worried about her staying out, and like sort of the little day-to-day things that I think mothers and daughters experience. But it is interesting that she's never had any parenting experience at all in any way. She's been in some ways raising other people's kids and being an elementary school teacher. She now realizes she has an extended family and there are multiple generations, and she's never even had a day of, holding one of her own babies.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.